John Schneider rarely sees a draft weekend trade he doesn't like. Could he go big fishing in the first round on April 23rd?
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on Blue Friday by my co-host Nick Lee, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, whether you are out in Raymond, Washington, or you are tuning in from Bozeman, Montana. Thanks as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the show. We are inside 2 weeks until the NFL draft, so of course we've got plenty of draft talk coming your way. We're going to look at some trade down scenarios for the Seahawks out of pick number 32, and then we're going to role play GM and head coach looking at 5 totally different scenarios at the end of the first round, and there may or may not be some hearty disagreements on what we should do between John Schneider and Mike Macdonald, but it's going to be an absolute blast here on a loaded Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Blue Friday Locked On Seahawks. John Schneider has rarely met a draft weekend trade that he doesn't like. He likes to trade as much as anybody. There's a reason he's been called Trader John over the years. Last couple seasons, he's made a handful of trades. The big one last year moving up to get Nick Eamon-Worry. There's also a past history of trading away late first-round picks for proven veterans. However, it is worth noting none of those have actually happened on draft weekend, Nick. So this would be unprecedented from that standpoint. John Schneider's made some trades for proven players in the middle of the draft, but never one to spring his first rounder. But we may have a little fun with this because it's time to bust out the trade machine. Probably the last time we're going to be busting it out before the upcoming draft. And so without further ado, I'm going to let you put your general manager hat on and dish out your first trade proposal here after messing with the trade machine.
Well, I mean, the first one is one I wrote on Emerald City Spectrum on, and it's a position that continues to be of need, even though the Seahawks have made, some marginal moves at the position. Running back and Devon Achane with Miami, they're pretty much selling off anything that's not bolted down. Now the question is Achane bolted down? They haven't exactly said he's totally up for grabs, but in this scenario, with Achane being a rental coming off of a 1,350 yard, 8 touchdown rushing season and leading, I think I was tied for the NFL lead with 5.7 yards per attempt. As an explosive runner. I got the Seahawks sending the second round pick this year and a 4th rounder next year for Achane services. And again, with him being a rental, he's not going to break the bank. And 5'9", 191, he's solid, but a little undersized. But he's got the wiggle, he's got the vision. I think he's a really good all-around back. And I don't think he merits much more than that. That even still might be on the higher end of the offer I would be okay with. I know that the Dolphins will probably maybe even want a bit more. People are going to look to the David Montgomery trade, which I believe was for a 4th rounder, a 7th rounder, and Juice Scruggs, the offensive lineman. So I do think Achane at this point has a higher upside, a better running back, so then merits a better offer. So between a 4th, 7th, and a player, I went with 2 higher picks, one this year, one next year. I did maybe toy with the idea of trying to get a pick back this year, just because that, of course, means now the Seahawks only have 3 picks this year. However, we can spin it. Remember, like Pete Carroll, and people are going to wince when I say this, but Pete Carroll kept spinning the Jamal Adams trade as, hey, Jamal Adams was our first round pick. We had that trade. So Devon Achane could be our 2nd round pick this year, I guess. But give me Devon Achane. Huge upside. Kind of on a failing franchise right now, still very young. Barely just turned 24 a few months ago. Plenty of tread on the tire still. And again, rental. So you like what you see. We can do the song and dance with Achane that we did with Ken Walker this past offseason. And maybe with this offensive line, he can have more success too. So I think that's a good replacement for what you lost in Ken Walker.
And I think Miami's going to have to temper expectations for what they're going to get back in return because of his contract situation. Like that's where the Dolphins are at. I don't think they have quite as much leverage as they think they do if they're going to move him. I'm going to bring a running back into Seattle as well, but I'm not going to go for the lowest hanging fruit here. I actually am going to go for a player that I know the Seahawks liked coming out of Troy a couple years ago, Kamani Vidal, who he's kind of in a tough spot in LA because he rushed for over 600 yards last year, had a healthy 4.1 yards per carry with a battered offensive line in front of him. Vidal can break tackles. He's got the ability to hit some home runs. He's not Ken Walker III, but he certainly has plenty of juice to hit some big plays for you. And he's short, compact, low center of gravity. They've got a Marion Hampton there. The Chargers have a couple other running backs they like on the roster. I could see him potentially being available here for the Seahawks, and you don't have to give up a second rounder. You would send the Chargers over a future fourth round pick. I think a 2027 fourth for a guy that was a sixth round pick has been a backup. And you also get a sixth rounder this year. That equals pretty solid value for both sides. The Chargers stash their 2027 draft. Right now, they could use some extra picks. This allows Seattle to bring in a back that I think Kamani Vidal, I've been saying this since I saw him play at Troy. I think Kamani Vidal has the goods to be a feature back in the National Football League. And he has shown at times that ability with the Chargers behind a really bad offensive line, at least with the injuries they've had. So don't have to give up as much, and he's got 2 years left in his rookie deal. So not a rental from that standpoint either. Just doesn't have the proven production, obviously, we've seen from Devon Achane. All right, Nick, let's get to your next one. And I have a feeling you and I've got a few splashy moves here to unveil from the trade machine.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call this a splashy trade, but he certainly is a guy with splashy traits, splashy physical tools. Kayvon Thibodeau, I feel like we've done this song and dance with him a few off seasons now. The Giants, of course, in flux. Dexter Lawrence, of course, wanting out of New York. And Abdul Carter there with the Giants, taking on a big role as their main edge rusher. Of course, you need more than one. But Thibodeau seems a guy with the expiring deal that seems like he could be on his way out as well, and that the Seahawks could pry him from the Giants. And sending the Giants a third rounder this year and a fourth rounder next year, and then recouping a pick as well for this draft on day 3, a sixth rounder back with Thibodeau. You're kind of buying low here, an injury-riddled 10-game season last year. I'm trying to just find that form that he had in 2023, 11 and a half sacks, 12 tackles for loss. It's there, Corbin. It is in there. I mean, he was an absolute stud at Oregon. And then it was a bit of a slow burn up and down with the Giants. And again, as we all know, is that a Giants thing? Is that a Thibodeau thing? I think I would like for the Seahawks to find out because he is so talented. So get him in the room. And again, this is with an expiring deal. So both my trades are with rental contracts. However, I kind of view this as like a prove it deal where you get him in the building, you like the fit, you like the player, extend him. But this is a final year of his deal. But and you get anything close to that 2023 production, it's an absolute bargain at a position that you really need, especially as you're going for a repeat Super Bowl championship. If Thibodeau bounces back and becomes a big part of that defense with the guys you already got, because you still have DeMarcus Lawrence as far as we know, Shannon Nwosu on a contract year himself. You lost Boye Mafe, so swapping basically Mafe for Thibodeau 1 year. I'll take that. Derek Hall, I think, is going to come into his own as well. So you like Thibodeau, extend him. If not, you didn't totally give up the farm for him, but I think that's a good kind of middle range trade.
I'm going to go with the big fish to end this. And look, I know there's a lot of speculation that's been thrown out there today. I haven't heard anything new on this. I do know that Myles Garrett was somebody that the Seahawks inquired about at the trade deadline last year, and Cleveland was not having any of that. However, this is the Cleveland Browns. And, I would have said going into the show, there's as good of a chance that this is going to happen as a Hall of Fame slugger having his statue revealed and having a bat broken on. Oh, wait, that's actually happened today. So I don't think that this is as far-fetched as what it may have sounded originally. Myles Garrett, I feel like we're going to be having Myles Garrett trade discussions even after he retires. Like, it's just every single year there's Myles Garrett trade rumors out there. But if I'm the Seahawks, pick 32, you're not getting a Myles Garrett. You're not getting a guy of that talent, even with some of the edges in this draft class. You trade your 2026 first, you trade your 2027 first, and a 2027 fourth round pick. And you get a 2026 seventh rounder, so you still have 4 selections in this year's draft, and you get Myles Garrett. I think that makes both sides happy in this case. If the Browns are going to move on from Myles Garrett, hey, you get your 2 first rounders, you get an extra pick for a guy that's got a very large contract. And the Seahawks are like, hey, we've got our alpha now. Well, we've got our guy that I know he's past 30, but he just broke the record for sacks last year. He is a phenomenal first ballot Hall of Fame player that deserves a chance to win. Bring him to Seattle. And everything I've heard, this is the kind of guy that fits your locker room too. He's just had bad luck in Cleveland. Myles Garrett is a perfect fit. And oh, by the way, he makes your already a dominant defense absolutely ridiculous, adding him to this group. When we come back, we are going to shift our focus away from some of these veteran proven vets. We're going to talk trade down scenarios going into the 2026 NFL Draft. Don't go away. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, quite frankly, a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Nick Lee. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. You're linked into your team every single day. Take it up a notch with the Locked On Seahawks Everydayer Club. You get ad-free Locked On Seahawks exclusive member-only access to the Discord group to chat with hosts such as myself, and much more. Just $5 a month, $50 a year. You can check that out at lockedonseahawks.supercast.com to join the discussion on Discord and get those ad-free podcasts. Okay, Nick, we are going to shift our focus back to the draft. Instead of the trade machine looking to add proven talent, let's talk about John Schneider's options at pick number 32. And by all accounts, everybody that I've talked to, this is not a surprise. John Schneider is hoping that he is going to get a really good deal from somebody to move up to 32 and recoup some picks. Of course, he's looking to do that with only 4 selections. And Seattle's going to be in a spot they're hoping to have several evenly graded players that, hey, we can trade down a few spots and we can still get one of these guys and have an extra pick or two. The Seahawks are hoping that happens. That does not always happen, though, when you pick at the end of the first round. And you add in the fact this is not a good quarterback class. There might be one QB that teams are looking to trade up for at the end of the first if Ty Simpson has not been taken by that point. We'll see if the board breaks that way. But when it's non-QBs, it's tougher to get value from teams going up. There's some, exceptions to that rule, but most of the time it's a QB that revolves around that, or a stud pass rusher. Maybe there's a player this year somebody wants to trade up that fits that bill. Let's talk about some scenarios that fit. And I think we get to start with the teams that would be trying to trade up for Ty Simpson, because that would be the most obvious example as far as a team wanting to move up.
Yeah, I think you got to be flexible with your situation here at 32, because the draft day is a living, organic thing. The quarterback needy guys just behind you. You assume the Raiders are going to get Mendoza, so at 36, that might not make a lot of sense. The Titans like Cam Ward. Arizona, I think, is one at 34, but 34 to 32, is that really a huge move? The Jets at 33 could be interesting, especially assuming they'll miss out on Mendoza and Now, that wouldn't be quite a trade up because he's there at 33, and they probably know the Seahawks aren't going to draft him. So as far as trade down scenarios, I did look at the Jets, however, as a possible, because they got pieces to add, they got pieces they need to add. And one, while maybe not necessarily a quarterback needing move, and obviously you're not going to trade back to the 33rd spot, I think their 44th pick is very interesting. They're at 44 because if you trade with their 44th pick, that's only moving back 12 spots. And just the simulator I used for this, you got their 103rd, so their 4th round pick and a 5th round pick. So you're adding 2 day 2 picks. I think there's an opportunity there where the Seahawks don't necessarily need to completely, drop like a rock in the 2nd round to trade down. It's just 12 spots and also pick up 2 picks. I think that's a good medium where the Jets are probably going to want to be aggressive, especially if a guy drops, not necessarily Ty Simpson, but and also the tantalizing prospect of them having consecutive picks at 32 and 33. If I'm John Schneider, I'm selling that on the phone. Hey, you got 2 consecutive picks here, like a snake draft. If you come up with us and give us those 2 day 2 picks. So the Jets, I'm looking at more as players, maybe not necessarily quarterback needy, but roster needy. Jets, one of them where they want to trade up, be aggressive if they like a guy, and you can kind of take advantage of that, maybe getting 2 day 2 picks and just moving back to that 44th spot. Maybe not in the 30s, but 44.
Yeah, the Jets at 44, they're not going to be trading up when the Seahawks are the team right in front of them. They're not going to be moving up. And if you move down to 1 spot anyway, you're not going to get much in compensation in return. But 44, the Jets could look at this as a situation where they could flip up to 32 and take a player, and then they might have some offers for 33, trade down and recoup a pick. There's a lot you can do when you have that kind of ammunition in terms of what you can do in the draft. And if they really like Ty Simpson, they might be looking at Arizona at 34 and thinking, hey, we can just double up right now. We can get another need filled and we can go get our QB in Arizona. Seattle's not going to want to trade with Arizona unless they just get blown away by a deal because you don't want to give them a franchise QB. I don't think Ty Simpson's going to be that, but you never know. Arizona's now got LaFleur coaching there. Maybe he's the guy that can get maximum out of Ty Simpson. So Arizona, you'd be like, look, if you want to trade up with us a couple spots, you're going to have to give up a king's ransom to jump over the Jets. So and maybe the Jets are looking at hey, we can move it from 44 to 32 and we can just make this a non-factor. Arizona has nothing they can do. Let's go get our QB and then we get another guy, So I think the Jets are at 44 makes sense. And look, the Cleveland Browns, I know Deshaun Watson is back healthy, but we have seen that nightmare scenario there. Shedeur Sanders, I don't think there's a lot of people in that building that believe he's the guy, certainly not with Dylan Gabriel as well. The Browns are just a revolving quarterback musical chairs situation. I could see them going up and trying to get Ty Simpson. And they're at 39. Seattle could get pretty good value back from Cleveland in that case. And maybe that's part of your Myles Garrett deal too. Maybe you're trying to set things up so they can go get their QB. But I think that Cleveland and the New York Jets are the only real obvious ones that would trade up for a quarterback in this instance because Seattle's not going to be wanting to pull off that move. Now, if you're looking for teams that'll climb to 32 for other positions, I'll throw out a couple for you. The Titans, they've got the Jets right in front of them. They've got the Arizona Cardinals right in front of them. The Titans have a lot of similar needs to those two teams. Jumping ahead of them, they may be willing to pay a pretty good price to move up to go get a coveted edge rusher or a corner. Robert Saleh needs pieces on that defense. They need weapons for Cam Ward as well. If somebody like Denzel Boston's still there, or the receiver from Texas A&M, Concepcion, if one of those stud receivers is still there, I could see Tennessee trying to move up very quickly and make that work. So I think the Titans, the Raiders, they have their QB, but they need to add pieces around him. And Kansas City at 40, the Chiefs need some pieces for Patrick Mahomes to throw to. They have some defensive holes to fill, including at corner. Those 3 teams, I could see Seattle getting really good offers from all of them for non-quarterback positions.
Yeah, and the Raiders too, with pick 36, I had them with a simulator trading back down from 32 to 36 and getting 134th overall pick, which is the 4th rounder. Bit of more of a vanilla one, but I think you're still accomplishing your goal of getting a day 3 pick, an earlier day 3 pick in the 4th round. And the Raiders certainly have the firepower in the draft to make that happen. They especially if a guy like Casey Concepcion or Caden Proctor at positions of need for the Raiders start falling. Again, this is all about if guys start falling that are in a position where the Seahawks don't need to take that guy, they can take some calls. The Raiders are one that, throw a dart at the board. They probably need that position. So they want to get the best player available at the best value. Trading up to 32 might make a lot of sense depending on who that is. And especially in the scenario I was doing where I was trading down with the Raiders, just 4 more picks, you still had, in my simulation, Brandon Cisse and Chris Johnson still there at 36. So as far as your board, it's not going to be crazy different, I don't think, between 32 and 36 because the needs of the teams between 32 and 35 are way different than your needs. And so I think the guys that you want are probably still there. But yeah, the Raiders are one to look for as well. I also had another one, the Saints trading. They have, I think it's 9 picks in this draft, 8 or 9 picks. And maybe you try to pull a Kevin Costner and draft it. I want my pick back, from the Rashid Shaheed trade. And you try to get at that.
That one would actually be realistic because we've seen day 3 picks that happen, but not, not top 5 picks.
No, but that's one to watch for just from the sheer volume the Saints have. So maybe they can get one of the Rashid Shaheed picks back with a nice deal there.
Yeah, I think that those teams that we just mentioned there, and there could be somebody else that, comes out of the woodworks that when you're talking about non-quarterback positions, any of those teams behind Seattle could have somebody that's coveted on their board. But those 3 teams, the Titans, Raiders, Chiefs, and again, we could throw the Cardinals in here, but I don't think the Seahawks are going to be openly wanting to, unless Arizona's general manager comes in and says, look, I'm going to give you this, and this, and nobody else. We're going to overpay compared to everybody else to go up and get somebody. Then Seattle might say, all right, well, we're willing to play this game. But I think it's going to be one of those non-NFC West teams like the Titans, the Raiders, the Chiefs. Looking at the AFC, those are all teams I could see trying to trade up for a non-quarterback and move back into the first round. When we come back, we're going to continue our draft scenarios with a little bit of role play. We're going to have John Schneider and Mike Macdonald working through 5 different first rounds and trying to figure out how they're going to navigate the draft board for the Seahawks on April 23rd. That'll be coming your way up next here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. Here in the few seconds I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check off all of your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of our show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Welcome back to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, John Schneider. Corbin Smith. We are getting ready to dive into role play, and I'm already all in on being John Schneider, and we agreed on this before we started the show. My co-host, Nick Lee, here on our Blue Friday episode. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. Nick made the declaration very quickly that he wanted to be Mike Macdonald in this scenario, and we're going to pretend that we are in the draft room, the war room, however you want to call it. And we are going to have 5 different scenarios for the Seahawks at pick 32, assuming they don't move up in this draft. 5 scenarios at pick 32 with a top 10 players remaining available and 1 trade proposal that we have to comb through. So I get to be John Schneider. I believe last year it was the other way around. You get to be Mike Macdonald. We're going to have a little bit of fun with this. So let's get to our first scenario, and we are on the clock. and a look at who's available, Nick. Our best player available, our number one player on the board, Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State. You've got a couple of good corners in Brandon Cisse out of South Carolina, Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, Zion Young, the edge out of Missouri, as well as Malachi Lawrence, the edge out of UCF, Jacob Rodriguez, the Heisman finalist linebacker out of Texas Tech, TJ Parker, an edge out of Clemson. I know you are certainly a big fan of him, Mike Macdonald. And then AJ Halsey, the safety out of LSU. So we've got those options on the table, and we've got a trade offer from the Atlanta Falcons. I've been ringing their phone as John Schneider here, and they're offering pick 48 and pick 79. That's a big drop down, but that's a second really valuable pick there in the middle of the third round to get in a deal. I love that. There's really not a trade that I don't want to make normally, but I'm not moving down that far because I think we're going to lose most of these guys, if not all of them on this list. And there's too much talent there, Mike, for us to trade down here.
Yeah, I do not care about the trade offer. I like that there's too many guys on this list that I really want to take. A lot of these guys, I think, have the mob mentality, and I think a guy that there's two specifically that I'm looking at is Chris Johnson and TJ Parker are the two, and we're not going to make draft picks, but I think that we're going to probably go with sticking with the pick here, and just with the sheer drop there, that doesn't make me feel loose and focused, John. I think that we're going to have to stick here and make a pick, because otherwise the 16 slots, McDonald, no relation, I don't think. I have to go back in my family history. I'm not sure if we're related. Family searches out there that maybe we're six cousins, but we like football the same, so maybe we are related. But I think we got to stick here and make a pick, John.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement, Mike. We'll stick and pick, and just for giggles here, I think Chris Johnson has to be the selection. Okay, our next scenario here, scenario 2, running the simulator again, hitting the restart button, and a little bit different list of players available in this instance. We've got Christian Miller, the defensive tackle out of Georgia, Denzel Boston, the receiver out of Washington, Zion Young, Jacob Rodriguez, and Chris Johnson still on the board this time. Chase Bisontis, who was picked the last time around, the guard out of Texas A&M, Lawrence, and then Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the very large athletic safety out of Toledo. All those players are on the board, and the offer from the New England Patriots is to drop from 32 to 63, but they do offer up pick 95 and a second-round selection in 2027. We give up 32 and a seventh-round pick in 2027. I just don't want to drop down that far, Mike. I really don't.
Well, I also want to stiff arm the Patriots just one more time. It's just they clearly have a guy they want. They clearly have a guy that they feel fits their program, and I would love nothing more than to once again shut them down when they're very close to something they really want. So for a second time in a couple months here, we're going to stiff arm the Patriots and keep them from something they want. No, let's stick and pick it. It's way too far of a drop for me, John. I don't like it, especially with a few guys in there who I think love football as much as you and I, and just some of the fits in the program that we have. And again, it's the Patriots. Let's not do any deals there. They're losers over there in New England. They're sour grapes. They want something that we have, and right now that's the 32nd pick, and they can't have it.
We already have 19 draft picks next year, too. So I don't think we need to add that second round selection. Not that it doesn't sound nice. I never really want to turn down a second round pick opportunity. But it looks like this draft board is really nice. And in this instance, again, probably, Chris Johnson, or for what to go offensive line, Chase Bisontis. We can put him with Gray, and we can have a really nice offensive line for the next half decade here. All right, let's get to scenario 3, hitting the restart button here. I'm really enjoying this. John and I both have really nice beards, so it's really fitting here. Mike, not so much. Mike got kind of hairy today. Anyway, our best players available: Christian Miller, Brandon Cisse, Zion Young, Avion Terrell, the corner out of Clemson, making his first appearance here. Chris Johnson is not available in this simulation. D'Angelo Pons, corner of Indiana, Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard out of Oregon, Gabe Acas, the edge out of Illinois, and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety out of Toledo, once again on our list. And as far as a trade, look, Mike, I think we moved down in this instance. Here's the offer that we just got. I just got off the phone with Howie Roseman and his squeaky voice, and the offer that we got, 32 and 188 for 34, 98, and 197. We're moving down 2 spots and swapping to get a higher pick. That is the end of the 3rd round and a comp pick. And we also get another day 3 selection. To me, this is a run to the phone. Let's go make that trade. I think we're definitely going to get one of these players we like, only moving down 2 spots.
Yeah, John, I mean, with moving back 2 spots, getting an extra top 100 pick, and with the Eagles in this deal, in this simulation, obviously doing a deal with the Cardinals, they have a guy they're itching for. Let's do let's stick with mission over baloney and stick with guys we like, but don't go too far, but still acquire that pick, because I think that's a mission for you, John, is to get an extra day 2, day 3 pick. So your mission over baloney, my mission over baloney. Let's do it.
And this is also an instance, look, that was Arizona's pick, so I don't know what Arizona was doing, but they gave Philadelphia that pick, and now Philly's giving it to us. We get to inadvertently stick it to an NFC West rival. I love it. All right, next scenario here. Who is on the board this time around? Colton Hood from Tennessee, the corner, for the first time making an appearance. He and Brandon Cisse and Chris Johnson are all on the board here still. Denzel Boston, the receiver out of Washington, still on the board. Jadarian Price, the running back out of Notre Dame, first time he's been available. He has been picked before us in every single one of these scenarios. So the best available running back is available here. I just rattled off a lot of names here, Mike, a lot of guys that we have watched a ton of tape on, that we have poured a lot of our hearts into watching, that we like. And the Cleveland Browns are offering us for 32 and 188, pick 39, pick 70, and pick 248. I'm feeling like we might want to pull the trigger here, Mike, because there are so many names there. I know there's a chance we could lose all 3 of those corners, but there's a really good chance we're going to get a couple of those guys available, and we get to recoup a pick, and we get a higher selection in the middle of the draft.
Well, speaking of 12 is 1, John, there's 12 guys that I'd love to pick there. I only got 1 spot, so I think the math checks out. Move 7 spots, get that 70th pick, and all you're really doing is giving up that 188th as well, and getting that late round pick from the Browns. They're desperate, obviously. They've been desperate for a long time for 2 things we got in the trophy case now. Let's let them have a shot. It's cute. Let's let them have a shot, go up 7 spots, get a couple more picks from them, and let's do this deal, John, because I know you want that extra pick or 2. I can see the salivation.
I've got itchy trigger finger going on my. I got to make the deal here. All right, we've got one last one here. One last draft day scenario here in our role play. And once again, Colton Hood is on the board. We don't have Brandon Cisse. Jacob Rodriguez is available. Avion Terrell, Chris Johnson, Pregnon, Lawrence Price. You still got a lot of options here. And my good buddies over in Green Bay have called up, and they're offering for 32 and 188, 52, 84, and 120. I love you guys, but not this much. Mike, that's too far. And look, we're not going to get all these guys. They're going to all be gone when we get up. I think, I love Green Bay. I almost have to trade by default with them, but I'm going to finally stand up to them and say no today.
Well, John, I do not care for the Packers. And I do not care moving back 20 spots. I don't care for that. Let's stick to our mission over anything else, getting the best player available here at 32 and not moving back 20 spots. Don't do it, John. I know the temptation is there, but leave the boys in green and yellow alone. Let's make our pick here.
Let's stick and pick. I like it. And going out of our role plays here, just to say, I think those last 2 boards, if it fell that way and I was John Schneider, I'd be trying to do some, jumping jacks in the war room. I think those were the 2 best big boards that were remaining of the 5 lists that we had. And hopefully this gives fans a little bit of insight. Obviously it was a very hastened process that we put this through, but just an idea of how different the board can look at pick 32 just with a couple different picks and how that impacts your decisions, how it impacts what other teams are going to be willing to offer. And there's all the other trades that happen beforehand that can go into it. It is why the NFL draft is so fascinating. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick and Nick Lee 51. Make sure to check out the Locked On Seahawks Everydayer Club, lockedonseahawks.supercast.com, ad-free Locked On Seahawks, members-only Discord group, access to chat with hosts such as myself and much more. $5 a month, $50 a year. Make sure to check that out. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. We'll be back with another Mock Draft Monday coming out of the weekend as we draw closer to the real deal. So enjoy your weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and go Hawks.